All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ken Ebie. I'm founder and principal of Ebie Strategies, and I'm EVP of Tomorrow.City, USA, and excited to have this conversation with Oliver Libby and on building a new foundation for the American dream. So, Oliver, we've had a number of conversations, and I think many people, including people in this room in our conversations, have felt that we are at a real pivotal point in our history. We have not kept pace with the cost of living in most cities. We have a lot of surveys indicating that the level of trust in government has been broken. And there's a rise in polarization, a lack of convening and conversation that I think is detrimental to a lot of functions that are required by a functioning society. So we have a wonderful introduction and an intervention in your book, Strong Floor, No Ceiling. And it's a bold and unifying solution in these fractured times. It's been described as radically moderate. And it's a plan to combine the best ideas from the political left with the best ideas from the political right to really rebuild the possibility and create opportunity for everyone in American society. So let's dive right in, and I want to hear a little bit about the strong floor piece of your thesis, the importance of a thriving middle class. And I want to just have an understanding of what aspects of the strong floor are critical and are being handled appropriately, and what governments you think are providing the strong floor well.
Well, first of all, thanks, Ken. And I will say I have not had walk-on music that cool while walking on with like a tea. So I feel very cool. So maybe it might help our audience if we just situate quickly in what I mean by strong floor, no ceiling. The idea is in a era defined by division, by polarization, by a lack of faith in the fundamental secular religion of our country, which is the American dream. You know, whether you came here 5 minutes ago or your family came over on the Mayflower, whatever religion you have, if you have any, we all grow up hearing about the American dream and hoping that it's true for ourselves and for our kids. And today, very few people believe it is true. And in fact, the facts back that up for the first time in a long time. And so the question is, how do we reignite that and where? Because as we all know, because we're here at Tomorrow.City, cities are the laboratories for pushing forward society. And cities are the place that everyone looks to set the tone, the pace of change, innovation, et cetera. And so if we're going to do this reignition of the American dream, it's going to start in cities. And I contend in this book that we need a strong floor below which we don't let our fellow citizens fall. And the services that are so fundamental in our cities today, education, healthcare, good paying jobs, housing, affordable housing, the foundation of affordability underneath all of that, safety and security in our homes. These are the things that will patch up the cracks and make sure that we can stand on a strong floor. But in America, it's not enough. We want to believe that if we reach up, that if we work hard, play by the rules, that we ought to be able to have no ceiling to what we can do, and we ought to be able to earn our way into the middle class. If we invent something or run something great, we ought to be able to do even better than that and fundamentally leave our kids better off. And so when you think about how this plays into cities, Ken, you think about the provision of these incredibly important basic services and the equitable provision of those services. So folks in this audience are working on technologies, applications, et cetera, AIs that help light the way to some of the services that already exist or create new services in partnership with government. You asked where this is being done well. There's a lot of places and a lot of cities, some of them represented here, that are doing really good work. I like to reflect on Detroit because it had the opportunity to innovate from a place where it could make mistakes because it kind of couldn't have gotten a lot worse than it was. And so there were opportunities to try new things, to bring in innovation, and to have some very successful programs. So I think when you think about the strong floor, it's all of the things that cities in a cross-sector basis can do to patch that floor for folks, to work together, and to make sure that once those programs exist, that citizens, small businesses, and et cetera, know how to find them and take the benefit of those.
That's phenomenal. So you spoke to this as well, and I know that you have a very proud lineage of your family coming to the United States, right? And you being the first in your family, I believe, the first generation that is native English speaker. So you are really, I think, in many respects, you know, as they say, your ancestors' wildest dreams, right? Now, part of why a lot of us are here is because of what we have known as the American dream, which I think speaks to the no ceilings piece of your thesis, which is that you come here, you work hard, let your ambition, let your industry take you as high and as far as you can. And so I wanted to talk to you, and I want you to tell the audience about kind of, while we talk about this, we're talking about creating conditions that really have striving capital markets, create a very solid base for business to thrive, for entrepreneurship, not just to be a gamble, but to have a sure shot to owning a business that is scalable, that generates revenue and economic security for more than one person, right? Multiple people. All of these things are part of the American dream, but how does pursuit of the American dream from a capitalist standpoint actually lead to expanding the pie for all?
It's fundamentally important. You can't. People have asked me in the writing of this book, are strong floor and no ceiling opposite? And my strong belief is that they're tied, because the strong floor is expensive, and we all know that. Many of you work in cities, provide these programs. They're not free, and it's really expensive to provide education, healthcare, jobs, housing, et cetera. And so we want to grow the economic pie, and we want to have that done by galvanizing the individual effort of Americans. Now, if you poll people, even people who identify on the political fringes of each of our parties, the idea of no ceiling if you play by the rules and work hard is extremely popular. We have a problem in this country with wealth, not because we have an inherent problem with wealth and success, but because it feels so rigged and unfair, and like people don't have the chance to have that for themselves. So what role can cities play in this? Well, it's really important for us to think about cities as the drivers of expanding the economic pie. And there are at least a couple of ways in which I've worked in my hometown of New York to do that. Number one, obviously, we want to make sure that cities are a friendly place for business, for economic growth, for opportunity. And we got to remember, that's not just making sure that Google and Amazon have a facility in your city, although that's important. It's also making sure the backbone of business in America, small to medium business enterprises, have a thriving place, access to talent, to capital, to loans, et cetera. And that's really important. A lot of cities do really good work on economic development. And I would say, you know, from the perspective of the no ceiling part, we have to finally remember that technology plays a role, again, in lighting the pathway to a lot of these benefits, in providing a lot of the job growth in our cities today. And it's important to note, I mean, if you look at Silicon Valley, if you look at the venture capital industry, there's a certain brand and even a certain politics recently that's been associated with the innovation economy. It doesn't need to be like that. So many startups, including so many of the folks in this room, exhibiting back there, are doing things that are incredibly important to giving opportunity to citizens in our cities, and that's something we should double down on.
Absolutely agree. So you're an interesting guy. You do a lot of things, right? You're a venture capitalist, right? You have your own firm. You also started a nonprofit. You are a father, right? And you are also just, you know, overall involved and engaged and concerned about public policy. And so you've been in a number of conversations. We're both in New York, and you've had conversations with the current mayoral administration around potential ways forward. And I find it really interesting in a lot of these spaces, such as Tomorrow.City, you have people coming from many different sectors, right? Just like yourself, they have their feet or their hands in a number of different places. And so this perspective that you have, I want to know if you could kind of speak to how this moment, where we are as a society, really requires an understanding of how to build community, how to have conversations, how to connect, how to convene in a manner similar to what we're doing here in West Palm Beach in order to build this new foundation for the American dream. And I'll ask you this last question. Is there fundamentally a route, is there a lane for a practical and centrist government in the United States today?
I'm so glad you asked that. So, you mentioned in the introduction here the term radical moderation. I do not believe that being moderate or centrist or practical has to be boring. Sometimes it takes very disparate policies that might feel like they are owned by one or another side of our political discourse and mashes them together into good policy. Cities, fundamentally, I think y'all would agree, they magnify everything in our society. If there are political fractures, then our cities are even more fractured. If there are inequalities, they're even more unequal in our cities. And so that magnification is also an element of front running. If we want to know where our society is going, we should look to our cities. And so I have an enormous belief, and we've actually polled in my organization some work around this, that people believe that we can still do great things together if we unite. So there's a few guiding lights to that within our cities. Number one, cross-sector partnerships. I mentioned it a moment ago. This room is a cross-sector room. It's fundamentally important. No one sector, not startups, not big business, not government alone, not nonprofit. Nobody has the answer to all the problems intrinsically to one sector. And so we must work together, and we must lean on each other, each sector, for what we do particularly well. It also means, though, that we need to trade on the pride that people have and where they come from. And by the way, that doesn't mean that they have to have been a lifelong citizen of a particular city. Sometimes people are really proud of a place they've just moved to, but there's an infrastructure chapter in my book, and there's 10 infrastructure is security, infrastructure is mobility, and the last one is infrastructure is pride. People want to be proud of where they live, and when they are, you can call them to do great things. You can ask them to make certain sacrifices, to participate in certain things, to educate themselves more, as long as you are delivering on your end of the bargain as people who are running cities, running large businesses in those cities, running programs in those cities. And I really believe that our society has such an enormous reservoir of hope, of still, despite the enormously depressing times that we live in, no matter what part of the political spectrum you live in, that it feels like it's impossible to make progress, but I really don't believe that's true. And when you ask people, they don't believe it's true either. And I think if we had cities with strong floors and no ceilings, we would have a country with a strong floor and no ceiling. It would reinvigorate the American dream, and we would all be doing our jobs to give people a better life, which is, after all, what this is all about.
Well, I'll say no more. I think we'll leave it on that. But I will say that everyone should kind of keep that in mind. Strong floors, no ceiling. That phrase is I think it is going to enter the cultural zeitgeist, and it's going to stay there for a long time, because that's exactly what I think we need. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and the work that you all are doing, what I've heard all day today, in all the breakouts and all the speed. This is exactly what we need to be doing. Tomorrow.City is doing a great job. So, Ken, thanks for having me here.
Thank you. Oliver Libby.